Good morning. Thank you once again for the opportunity to address you today. My name is still Jenny van der Meeberg and I'm a trade advisor at the Australian Trade Commission. Today I'll be presenting an overview of the UAE and touch on some of the opportunities for vegetable exporters who might be considering doing business in the Middle East. So, although today is about the UAE, I'm actually going to talk a little bit about the broader region too. This slide shows Austrade's focus across the MENA region. MENA is the Middle East and North Africa. So you can see our main focus is in the GCC and Morocco. Now the GCC is really important and you'll probably heard that term a lot. The GCC is the Gulf Cooperation Council and it's a political and economic alliance of 6 Middle Eastern countries: Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain and Oman. So you can also see that we are keeping a watch on Iran, Jordan and Tunisia too in the region. So the UAE is Australia's #1 trading partner in the MENA region. Currently, student enrolment figures from MENA in Australia are approximately 18,000. And, this amazed me, there's over 40,000 Australian expats residing in the region currently. There are over 2,000 Australian businesses exporting to the region, and there's total direct flights into Australia from the region at around 147 a week. Those flights are from Emirates, Qantas, Etihad, Virgin, Qatar, and they operate from their respective hubs, obviously. In terms of tourism, the total arrivals for the year ending June 2014 from MENA were at 98,000, which is an increase of 13% relative to the same period last year. For the year ending June 2014, a high proportion, around 72%, of the MENA visitors visit Australia for leisure, and the leisure segment recorded a growth of 19%. So this tells us that there is some familiarity with the Australian market. The focus for Austrade in MENA in 2014-15 is still on markets with stability, growth and a strong trade relationship with Australia. Austrade's focus remains on the GCC countries and Morocco. With large cash reserves, these countries have the ability to immediately fund ambitious programs for self-sustainability through investments in new industries, infrastructure, mining, tourism, education, healthcare, major events, education and skilling of its very large young populations, managing rapid urbanisation, protection from food shocks, accelerating water security and energy efficiency solutions. So you heard me say food shocks. There is a strong emphasis on securing food supplies. The propensity to import within the region is unusually high. It's also worth noting that the population is young and growing. 70% of the 101 million customers in this region are under 30. This table shows us Australia's key trading partners in the region. So you can see very clearly that the UAE is first, but it is interesting to note that Saudi Arabia isn't too far behind. And this next table shows us a total of $2.4 million in agricultural exports to the region in 2013-14, with the majority going to the UAE and Saudi Arabia. According to the Economist Intelligence Unit, food imports to the region could climb by a staggering 105% from US $25.8 billion in 2010 to US $53.1 billion in the next decade. Yet this figure tends to be a rather conservative estimate, given that the Gulf's population is expected to surpass 50 million by 2020, and the tourist numbers are expected to double over the same period. Due to the lack of agriculture in the GCC, food imports are significant, forming 70% of the food requirements. Due to extensive trade liberalisation, a high percentage of imported products, at approximately 50%, are further re-exported to GCC countries, former Soviet states, the Indian subcontinent and Eastern Africa. It is estimated that in 2014, the UAE will spend US around $9.59 billion on food products. According to Applin Capital's Food Sector Update, population growth and the increase in the numbers of foreign tourists, as well as per capita income, will see food consumption in the region reach 49.1 million metric tonnes by 2017. This represents a compound annual growth rate of 301% from 2012 to 2017, which is pretty phenomenal. Rising incomes, coupled with high dependence on imports, presents opportunities for Australian food and beverage exporters, particularly in the high-value premium food sector. For Australian exporters, trade opportunities exist in most food categories. However, the market is highly competitive given the UAE's open trade policies. In some instances, consumption is small, so opportunities exist for consolidators of mixed consignments. The UAE and Saudi Arabia have emerged as major re-exporting hubs due to their strategic location. These countries have become a significant link in the region's food chain, supported by strong logistics, location, and well-established transportation routes by air, sea, and land. A rapidly growing tourist population and emerging affluence has encouraged demand for high-quality, organic, and specialised foods. The introduction of hypermarkets and superstores is reshaping the retail sector and providing a diverse range of food to supplement the taste preferences of a large expatriate population. In recent years, there has been a shift in food habits from traditional to Western-style convenience foods. Despite the presence of food processing companies, there still remains a considerable gap in food processing and packaging capabilities in the region. So the reasons for growth rate is threefold: a rapidly growing population, an increase in tourists, and rising income levels. Interestingly, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia will continue to lead the region's food sector with about 60% of total consumption. And Qatar is actually expected to outpace that of the GCC countries due to rising population and increase in tourist arrivals. So, doing business in the UAE. The UAE, with its aggressive spending and high import propensity, presents vast opportunities for Australian business in the food industry. However, the large number of players, the lack of internet information, and different business culture makes it difficult for Australian companies to identify the most important contacts and secure appointments. Relationships are key to doing business, and emphasis weighs heavily on mutual respect and building trust. Regular visits, stopovers, and attendance at exhibitions would help reinforce to customers your interest in their market and commitment to a strong partnership. Austrade's experienced business development managers are members of key food sector business groups and provide input into a number of industry directories. They're well connected with business people and are able to open doors on behalf of Australian companies. Austrade arranges frequent business delegations to the UAE and appointment programs for companies making individual visits. The UAE is a regional hub for trade exhibitions. Austrade arranges activities which bring local and Australian business people together at a number of key trade exhibitions each year. I'm sure many of you have heard of Gulf Foods. There is a big difference between the commercial laws in the UAE and Australia, which, if not understood, can result in decisions that impede the growth of business. It is very important to understand the legal context. Austrade provides information about agency and distribution agreements and costs, as well as franchise regulations and the different types of commercial entities open to Australian companies. Austrade can also refer Australian companies to providers of professional services such as lawyers and accountants. In terms of distribution channels, import and land distribution of food products is carried out by the private sector. Government intervention is limited to health regulations and labelling requirements. Many importers in Oman, Qatar, Bahrain and Kuwait buy food items via the UAE, since individual orders from these countries tend to be less than the minimum required by suppliers. Thus, container-sized loads are shipped to the UAE and broken down into smaller quantities for transshipment to these countries. Large importers are often integrated with logistics and distribution companies who supply to wholesalers and retailers. Some of the large importers and distributors run their own retail outlets as well. The UAE distribution industry is very advanced with sophisticated warehousing and cold chains and inventory systems. The smaller organisations that do not own their own warehouses still have access through rented facilities. In terms of regulation, there's no custom duty for fresh produce into the GCC, but there is a 5% duty on processed foods. The documents you require: a phytosanitary certificate, a health certificate, and a certificate of origin. So similar to yesterday, I'm going to go through a handful of stats just to demonstrate the potential in the market. Again, these statistics are from the UN trade map. I have the 2013 data. Unfortunately, the 2014 data was not available, and it is using HS codes. So if we have a look at broccoli and cauliflower, UAE imports 105 tonnes of broccoli and cauliflower from Australia. Australia, however, exports 3,600 tonnes to the rest of the world, primarily going to Singapore, followed by Papua New Guinea, Malaysia, then Qatar, then Saudi Arabia, and then the UAE, making the UAE sixth. The UAE imports 12,700 tonnes of broccoli and cauliflower from the world, primary sources being Jordan, followed by Spain, followed by Oman, then Egypt, and then Australia, making us fifth. Interestingly, our export numbers have only dropped marginally over the last 3 years, whereas the total imports for these products into the UAE have dropped substantially by more than half over the same time. We can see that comparing the top table to the bottom table. Carrots and turnips. So the UAE imports around 21,000 tonnes from Australia. Australia exports around 73,000 tonnes to the rest of the world. The primary destination is the UAE, our number one buyer. The UAE imports around 69,000 tonnes from the world. Primary sources, similar story to yesterday, being China and Australia second. Australian exports of these products have been steadily rising into the UAE over the past 3 years, and we can see that from the top line of the table. Lettuce. The UAE imports around 29 tonnes of lettuce from Australia each year, whereas we export around 803 tonnes of lettuce to the world, primarily going to Singapore, followed by Malaysia, then Hong Kong, Brunei, Thailand, Papua New Guinea, Fiji, and then the UAE, making them 8th destination. The UAE imports around 21,000 tonnes, which is typically coming from Jordan, Oman, Spain, the Netherlands, Lebanon, the USA, and then Australia, making Australia 7th. And the last one of these fun charts, the UAE imports around 1,500 tonnes of potatoes from Australia each year. Australia exports around 39,000 tonnes to the world, primarily Indonesia, followed by Korea, Thailand, and then the UAE. The UAE, however, imports 152,000 tonnes of potatoes. Primary sources are Pakistan, Lebanon, Egypt, China, India, the Netherlands, France, Germany, Jordan, and then Australia. So we're 10th on this particular list. Although Australia's export to the UAE have remained steady, there has been considerable growth in the import of potatoes into the UAE, with figures almost tripling over the past 3 years. Again, we see this by comparing the top table to the bottom table. So, as a market, the strengths and weaknesses. The strengths are Australia's reputation. There is a customer preference for imported products, there's limited customs regulation, and it's an organised retail sector. Challenges can be the strong dollar, although that's starting to look a bit better. The long distance and higher freight cost, although I will mention that although distance is an issue for fresh premium product, air freight is becoming a possible consideration. With the partnership of Qantas and Emirates in 2013, combined, the two carriers operate 98 weekly services between Adelaide, Brisbane, Melbourne, Perth and Sydney to Dubai. So it's now an option people are considering. And finally, one of the weaknesses is Australia's export commitment to the region, which is often cited by customers as a challenge to business. They get the impression that we are using them as plan B, and our focus is typically on Asia as plan A. So the opportunities and threats. The opportunities are that it's a large importing region, there's a growing population, there's a large growing F&B industry with an increased number in players, there's a high spending power and a fairly large manufacturing sector. The threats are competition from other export nations, subsidies to increase domestic production, and climatic conditions, environmental factors affecting supply from Australia. And what we mean here is that they're really looking for continuous, uninterrupted supply. They want it on the shelf all year round. So sometimes they find that challenging when they have to deal with seasonal issues. I'm going to talk a little bit now about Austrade's network so that I can explain Austrade's role in assisting exporters and how we can deal with individual companies to help you take advantage of these opportunities. So as you can see from the map, we have a network of 90 offices across 50 countries with different services offered in different markets based on priorities. Austrade's operations are focused on growth and emerging markets that have high growth potential. So this includes both Malaysia and the UAE. The Austrade office in the United Arab Emirates is also responsible for Iran, Libya and Qatar. The Austrade office in Saudi Arabia is responsible for Bahrain, Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, Oman, Sudan, Syria and Yemen. And the Austrade office in Kuwait is responsible for Iraq. So we have the region really well covered should you have an interest outside the UAE. Austrade's range of online sources includes export market country profiles, information about exporting and doing business in international markets. Our website hosts a number of guides and online modules, including information on export market research and market selection, export finance, dealing with agents or distributors, and what you should consider when managing sales inquiries. All of this information is available at austrade.gov.au/export. And look, I know websites aren't really that exciting, but I promise you there is so much material there. I really encourage you to go and have a look because chances are you will find things you didn't even know you need to know. Online resources also include an international readiness indicator designed to help Australian businesses assess whether they are ready for international business. This useful tool is based on Austrade's experience in assisting Australian firms enter international markets, and it focuses on the key aspects of what it takes to be ready for export and compete successfully overseas. This includes an assessment of a company's supply capability, your selling proposition, your marketing materials, and finances. The indicator provides a report card and then links to information and sources of assistance to help address any areas that you may need to work on. As I mentioned, we do have more than 84 country market profiles providing information and tips on doing business in overseas markets. You can also find out about upcoming events or register for a monthly e-newsletter, Export Update, covering the latest news, events, success stories and developments affecting Australian exporters. You can also register your company in the Australian Suppliers Database, which is accessed by international buyers sourcing Australian goods and services. I might add here that for some of you, especially those with a value-added product, you might also consider registering with FIAL. We work really closely with FIAL. They're the Food Innovation Industry Hub, basically. It's a national entity, and they've developed an e-catalogue. Now, the e-catalogue gives you the chance to present and profile your business and your products, which then builds a showcase of Australian capability, which, on the other side, in market, we use to show to buyers, and we then recruit those buyers to register on that same e-catalogue. To check out FIAL, it's fial.com.au/e-catalogue. Strongly recommend you have a look at it. It's probably quite appropriate for those of you looking at the retail sector. If you want to find out more about FIAL, potentially your local TradeStart advisor can connect you to it, and I'll talk about TradeStart advisors in a minute. Also, your state government, food or agriculture people should well know about it, or call me and I can help you. So Austrade can also assist by compiling key information on the market you are targeting and talk directly to local industry players to gauge their interest in meeting you and reviewing your products or services, saving you valuable time. Austrade offers tailored services to individual Australian organisations seeking to export or expand their export markets in growth and emerging areas. Our tailored services include market or country research, so that's help with specific export issues such as gathering data on market trends and statistics, identifying market barriers and regulations, assessing market potential, or gathering information and advice on suitability of a product or service. We do this by accessing databases, information resources, and local networks to gather primary and secondary information to feed back to you. We can also do potential partner and customer identification, which is where we help identify local contacts in international markets that can import, distribute, or support your product or service locally. We do this by researching key market players, competitors, and other contacts to identify the industry structure and, in consultation with you, approach those that best meet your criteria to introduce your products or services to. We can arrange appointments during a market visit, so once potential partners or customers are identified, with sufficient notice, Austrade can set up a visit program to help you maximise your time in market. We do this by approaching those contacts. You specifically identify and set up appointments for you to meet them so you can present your business capabilities. In some markets, Austrade staff may be available to join the meetings and provide language support. We also do follow-up to the initial introductions. After a market visit or an introduction, you may ask Austrade to follow up with the local contacts to gather their assessment of your products or services and a potential fit for you to do business with their organisation. Through this follow-up, we can advise you on the real potential with these customers and help you determine the next steps. And finally, with market promotions, to expand your international business, you may choose to participate in a range of offshore marketing activities, such as overseas exhibitions or trade missions organised by Austrade, state and territory governments, or in-market event companies. During these activities, you may ask Austrade to facilitate introductions to potential business partners overseas. The Australian Government Cost Recovery Guidelines requires Austrade to recover costs where we work intensively in the direct interest and for the benefit of an individual Australian business. As a result, these tailored services that require more than 2 hours of Austrade time are charged on a fee-for-service basis. These services are charged at a standard hourly rate of $275. This is a uniform fee in all markets, and you will be provided with a service proposal before we start any work on your behalf. So don't be afraid to talk to us and think we're going to send you a bill. You will well and truly know if you're engaging us to do tailored work with a service proposal. So, if this sounds great and you want to know how you can get started working with us, this is Austrade's national network. I want to talk particularly about the TradeStart network, which is an extension to Austrade's own offices and is delivered in partnership with state, territory and local governments. The prime objective of Austrade's TradeStart network is to assist small and medium-sized exporters achieve long-term success in international markets. It offers exporters the combined resources of Austrade and the partner organisation, providing local assistance and a direct link to Austrade's services and overseas network. I believe today, once again, I have my colleague, Todd Miller, joining me from Adelaide, up the back there. So can I strongly encourage, if you are based in South Australia, that you maybe go and say hello to Todd at the end of today, and he will be able to put you on the right path, whether you're in his region of South Australia or one of his colleagues, he can introduce you. Otherwise, if you'd like to contact us in other ways, again, there is our hotline number where you can speak to one of our advisors, our email address. You can see Jane's email address there. Jane is our Business Development Manager in Dubai. So if you have specific questions about the Dubai market, Jane has said she's willing to have all of you email her. And of course, then you can also see some of our websites. Thank you.